Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. I'm going to have you drink from the fire hose in this segment. I'm just going to give you a whole lot of information, stuff that I've been reading and discovering and researching, and we'll let you decide where we kind of focus our conversation as the program develops. We will open the phone lines in the up in the second or toward the end of the next segment and let you weigh in on what you want to focus on and what you want to talk about. So strap it on. Give you a whole bunch of information that I think is important for you to have. Now, I'm looking at a story here from Red State, which is a conservative website. Liberals in Wisconsin are trying to put pressure on the Obama administration to muzzle talk radio in the state of Wisconsin. They're trying to argue that 2 AM stations there, and this is what's important for you to understand about a network like the American Family Radio Talk Network. We are unapologetically conservative in our standpoint. Here are some liberals that are trying to put pressure on the Obama administration to pull the license, the FCC license, from 2 conservative, they're commercial stations in Wisconsin, because they feel that they inappropriately affected the outcome of the election that put Scott Walker in the governor's chair. So if they're going to go after those commercial stations for being too conservative, they'll come after AFR at some point. Got a story here about a 7th grader from Calgary in Canada. He stopped a bully from stabbing a classmate, and he was the one that was sent home. He was the one that was reprimanded for, he said, and the school said, we don't condone heroism here. We're not about heroic acts, or he shouldn't have done it. Should have gotten the attention of the teacher. The guy had a knife out and was on the back of a kid that he'd been bullying. And as far as this student knows, he was getting ready to stab him in the neck. So he jumps on the bully to save the life of his classmate, and he is reprimanded for that. Called into the vice principal's office. He was reprimanded. His mother was called and said his son had been trying to play hero, and the school informed her that Sir John A. McDonald Jr. High School does not condone heroics. And the mom says, well, by the time my son went to find a teacher, isn't it possible that the kid could have had his throat slit? And the teacher said, yeah, but that doesn't make any difference. He's still got to go get the teacher. We don't condone heroics at this school. And then we wonder why we are not producing true men in our Western culture. Here is the new social mobility czar in England. They have a social mobility czar. I don't even know what social mobility is or refers to, but they got a czar in charge of that in the UK. And he said that parents should not help their sons and daughters find jobs. Just leave it up to them. Even though you know that getting a job early in life may be good and trying to get them a good job to get them started is good for them, don't interfere. Let them do it. If they flounder and flail after a year, then you may want to step in and provide some help. Got GPS devices. This cracks me up. A car had to be removed from a staircase in the Spanish city of Teruel after its GPS system sent the driver down a pedestrian alley, the London Times reports, and it wasn't the first. Locals say at least 5 cars have met a similar fate in recent days as their digital maps identified the Calle Hartzenbuch as a passable road. And the guy says, look, one local said it's obvious from the top of the street that it's a staircase. So people are driving their cars down the stairway just because the GPS tells them to. You know, and it's a reminder to me, just because you have some authoritative voice telling you that this is the way to move forward, this is the way to go, this is the way to walk, don't listen to that just because it's some authoritative voice that you've been told you're supposed to trust. Think for yourself. Boston Globe's got a story today talking about what would happen if Roe v. Wade were overturned. And it's kind of a realistic view of what would happen. It goes back to some studies that were done in the state of New York back in the early 70s when New York was one of the first states to legalize abortion. And so women were coming from the states around. They couldn't get abortions in their home state, so they would go to New York and get abortions because they were legal there. So this kind of extracts or projects from there what would happen around the country if Roe v. Wade was overturned, and each state would be allowed to decide its own abortion policy. Now, Paul Linton, who is a pro-life attorney, pretty shrewd guy, he says probably only 11 states, maybe as few as 8, would actually put laws on the books that would prohibit most abortions if Roe were reversed. So there'd be 8 to maybe 11 states where you could not get an abortion. All the rest you could. So women in those states that wanted abortions would have to go out of state. And based on what they discovered in New York, there is a distance beyond which most women will not travel to get an abortion. So it probably would reduce the rate of abortion by about 15%. That's a realistic assessment. Here's some good news on the culture front. You probably heard about this Google Glass. It's glasses that you can wear where you can actually scan the internet. You can search the web while you're mobile, while you're wearing these glasses. And Google has banned porn. There was some porn site that had developed an app just for the Google Glass, and Google says not on our watch. So they banned the porn on the Google Glass, and that is very, very good news. You might have heard about this Navy SEAL, who they're saying is the first female Navy SEAL, goes by the name of Kristen Beck now. And this is what I'm looking at on this website. Meet the first female Navy SEAL, Kristen Beck. This is a guy who was Chris Beck, C-H-R-I-S, now goes by Kristen Beck. He's a guy. Don't let them lie to you. He's not a she. He's a guy. He was born Chris Beck. He was born a male. He was a male in every single cell of his DNA, every single cell of his body. He is still a male. He's so confused, he thinks he's a female trapped inside a male body, but he is a male in every single solitary cell of his body. So do not let them lie to you. He is as male today as he was on the day he was born. He's just incredibly confused in his head about his sexual identity. Now, you might have seen this latest scandal from Capitol Hill, and this is a scandal of top-level Obama officials, including Kathleen Sebelius, using fake emails, secret emails, private emails. Why do they do that? Because they have exchanges they do not want the public to know about. They know that every exchange, every email, every piece of correspondence on their official government website can be, they can be ordered to produce it. And so they will have secret emails, and they'll conduct a substantial amount of business completely in private, completely in secret. Then if they leave public service, they take those emails with them, and you can't go get them. And they're supposed to be matters of public record because they are doing the public's business. They are our servants. They are serving the public, and their correspondence ought to be available to the public when necessary. So they're trying to conceal us. Kathleen Sebelius, one of the worst offenders. And the Associated Press, interestingly enough, is the one that tumbled to this. And they published her secret email address. They put it right in the story. I sent it out in a tweet today, but the AP is the one that put it in there, kgs2@hhs.gov. That is her secret email address that nobody's supposed to know about. And the AP found it through a Freedom of Information request, and they busted it. They put her secret email out there where everybody can get to it. But this is not restricted just to Kathleen Sebelius. You might have heard about this. The head of the EPA, Lisa Jackson is her name. She's now moved on to, I think, to Apple. But she created an entire fake identity, a fake employee by the name of Richard Windsor, and she conducted a lot of EPA business using an email that appeared to be connected to an employee named Richard Windsor. Only Richard Windsor did not exist and does not exist. Here's a piece from the Washington Free Beacon. Richard Windsor may have only been an alias for former Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lisa Jackson. But listen to this. That didn't stop him, this fake imaginary friend, from being awarded numerous certificates for ethics and records management. Listen to this. The EPA awarded certificates naming Jackson/Windsor a, quote, scholar of ethical behavior. Jackson, under her secret alias, was also awarded certificates for completing training modules on email records management. So if you're going to have fake employees, they might as well be of the highest possible ethical standards. That's what's going on at the EPA. Now, we'll play some sound bites a little bit later in the program from the hearing this morning on the IRS. You had a number of these conservative groups that gave testimony this morning before the House Ways and Means Committee. Paul Ryan is on that committee. And they were talking about their personal experience with the IRS. Now, one interesting thing here is that all 6 of the groups that testified this morning were conservative groups. They were pro-marriage groups. They were pro-family groups. They were pro-life groups. They were Tea Party groups. And all of them gave personal testimony that they had been harassed, blocked, obstructed by the IRS when they applied for tax-exempt status. One case, the National Organization for Marriage, private donor information was released to their opponents, their enemies in the culture war. That is a felony offense to do that. Now, the interesting thing, and we'll just kind of finish this segment on this note, and then we'll come back and do some more content and start taking your calls. The interesting thing here is that there were no liberal or progressive groups that were called to testify this morning. And you think, well, that's because the Republicans were running the hearing. This is a true fact. However, the minority power of the party, party has the power to call witnesses at all committee hearings. So the liberals on this committee, the Democrats on this committee, could have called a liberal progressive group to testify about their harassment at the hands of the IRS. Why didn't they? Because they couldn't find one. There was no progressive liberal group that was targeted by the IRS for harassment. Even the acting head of the IRS admitted it. We didn't search for groups that had progressive or liberal or organizing in their label. We weren't even looking for them. Unless it said Tea Party, unless it said conservative, unless it said pro-life, unless we had some reason to think they were a Christian group, we just left them alone. So the only victims of this harassment turned out to be conservative groups, and 6 of them gave testimony this morning. And that's, to me, a pretty powerful indictment. Liberals could have called liberal groups that had been harassed by the IRS, couldn't find one. Focal Point AFR Talk, back in 2.